The day I was taken home by my wealthy biological father, the fake wealthy daughter locked the main gate. Sis grew up in a small mountain village. You'd probably feel more at home entering through the back door. I smiled. There's no need to go to all that trouble. If the main gate is locked, we'll just smash it open. So, that day, I literally smashed the main gate of wealthy Lucas mansion right off its hinges. At 22. I was tracked down by my wealthy biological father and welcomed back into the family. Lucas, the tycoon, held my hands and wept bitterly under a shower of camera flashes. Daughter, Dad's been searching for you so desperately all these years. I obligingly shed a couple of tears. Me too, Dad. After the media left, Lucas immediately returned to his usual self. He took out a tissue and gracefully wiped his nose. What's your name? Jenny, he nodded. All right, from now on, you're Jenny Roberts. Lucas didn't want to chat any longer. He tossed me 2 sets of keys, a bank card, and a note, then waved his hand and left. After taking 2 steps, he came back. The address is on the note. Drive home by yourself. Oh, and there's a fake wealthy daughter at home. I've spoiled her rotten. Watch out for yourself. With that, he finally left for real. I unfolded the note. The handwriting was flamboyant. Rose Mansion. Pick the most luxurious one. That's our place. The car's by the roadside. If you don't like it, go to the garage at home and choose another. The bank card password is your birthday. There's a fortune in it. Spend as you like. Don't bother me until it's all gone. I clenched the note, suddenly feeling a twinge of guilt that my acting earlier hadn't been more sincere. I drove the luxury car Lucas left me towards Rose Mansion. However, not being familiar with the high-end vehicle, I rear-ended another car not long after setting off. After getting out of the car, I stared at the Rolls-Royce Phantom in front of me, lost in thought. I was really something, my first ever rear-end collision, and it had to start at this high a level. The car door opened, and a man in a dark, gray suit got out. He wore a mask, so I couldn't see his face clearly. He walked around me and took a look at the rear of his car. Since the impact was very light and there wasn't even a slight scratch, he simply said it was okay and got back in the car. He left me standing there, dumbfounded. Was it really that simple? The heart that had been tightly clenched finally relaxed. When I hit the road again, I was extremely careful. However, the car in front suddenly braked hard for some unknown reason. I'd just gotten my driver's license and didn't have much driving experience. I'd long forgotten the principle of maintaining speed rather than changing lanes. Almost instinctively, I steered to the right. Bang! I hit it again. My legs felt like jelly as I got out of the car. It was still the same Rolls-Royce. This time, I'd really crashed into it. It would be hard to avoid paying compensation. Seconds later, the door of the Rolls-Royce opened, and the man stepped out slowly. After getting out, he first examined the rear of his car that had been hit. Then he walked up to me and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. Got something against my car. I pointed to the car on the left that had just braked suddenly. I was trying to avoid him. The man looked at the small truck on the left and fell silent. After dealing with this traffic accident, I was exhausted. For the 3rd time, I got into the pink Lamborghini Lucas had given me. I took a deep breath and slowly started driving. Ahead was the Rolls-Royce with a slightly dented rear. This time, I was extremely cautious, determined not to have any more accidents. I wanted to change lanes and get away from it, but the cars behind wouldn't let me, so I had to continue crawling behind the Rolls-Royce. At a crossroads, just as I stopped, the rear of my car was hit with a huge impact. The tremendous force sent my car crashing forward, pushing the Rolls-Royce in front a long way. I buried my face in the airbag, feeling suffocated. As my consciousness grew fuzzy, someone seemed to pull me out of the car and even gave me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. I opened my eyes and vaguely saw the face I'd seen twice earlier. When I regained some clarity, I realized that the fleeting glance hadn't been an illusion. The man I'd rear-ended for the 3rd time was now standing by the roadside. He'd taken off his suit jacket, and the cuffs of his shirt were rolled up to his wrists. When he saw me wake up, he rubbed the space between his eyebrows again. We stared at each other for a long while. Then he sighed. 3 rear-end collisions in 2 blocks. You really take the cake. I opened my mouth, but didn't know what to say. It was truly unbelievable. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured in this chain of rear-end collisions. Other than feeling a bit dazed from the initial huge impact, I was fine. After learning about the incident, Lucas sent his assistant to handle the rest and had the driver take me directly to Rose Mansion. After hitting his car 3 times, I'd wanted to apologize to the unlucky rich man, but I couldn't find him anywhere. Only another man dressed like an assistant showed up at the scene to deal with the aftermath. After searching fruitlessly, I had to give up. This time, I arrived at Rose Mansion smoothly. However, the moment I entered, someone tried to intimidate me. A girl dressed expensively stood inside the locked main gate, arms crossed, looking at me coldly. "Sorry, the main gate is locked." She casually pointed behind her and smiled. "Sis grew up in a small mountain village. You'd probably be more used to entering through the back door." I stared at her quietly and smiled. The 3 consecutive collisions on the way had exhausted me. Now, I hadn't even entered the house yet, and someone was trying to show off in front of me. It seemed Lucas was right. His adopted daughter was indeed spoiled and very difficult to deal with. Coming back to my senses, I smiled and took the car keys from the driver. "There's no need to go to all that trouble. If the main gate is locked, we'll just smash it open." With that, I held the car keys and walked towards the car. Anyway, the car belonged to Lucas, the gate belonged to Lucas, and the pampered little girl inside was also spoiled by Lucas. But I wasn't stupid. The car Lucas sent to pick me up the second time wasn't a luxury car. It seemed to be the family's nanny car. Normally, the nanny drove it to buy groceries. Inside the main gate, the girl still maintained her original posture, looking at me disdainfully. Presumably, she thought I was bluffing. I opened the car door and got in. Without any hesitation, I drove straight towards the main gate. A scream rang out in the courtyard. The girl scrambled away. I stopped the car and turned off the engine. I played with the key ring in my hand and smiled at her. "See, I'm in." The girl seemed to be terrified. She looked at me coldly but didn't dare to say a word. And so, I successfully moved into Lucas' huge villa in Rose Mansion. That night, Lucas, who usually rarely showed up, suddenly came back. The moment he entered, he loudly asked if I'd driven into the gate. His adopted daughter, Mia, ran over, hooked her arm around Lucas and exaggeratedly recounted what had happened. I frowned slightly and observed Lucas' reaction. I thought that if Lucas got angry, I'd use the money in the bank card he'd given me to pay for the damage. Lucas was extremely generous, and the figures in the card were staggering. However, the next second, Lucas threw his head back and laughed. Laughing, he slowly clapped. Good. The next day, when I went downstairs, I found that Lucas hadn't left. According to Kathy, the nanny at home, Lucas rarely came back. Even when he did, he usually left early the next morning. I shuffled downstairs in my slippers and greeted Lucas and Mia. She was wearing a flowery apron, making love breakfast for Lucas in the kitchen. When I went downstairs, I happened to see her coming out with a fried egg. She placed it in front of Lucas eagerly, her voice sickly sweet. "Dad, try this egg. I spent the whole morning making it." As she spoke, she accidentally showed the cut on her finger from chopping vegetables. I stood aside and glanced at it. "Cut your finger. Maybe you should go to the hospital early. If you wait too long, the wound might already heal." Mia gritted her teeth in anger but didn't dare say much in front of Lucas. I wasn't going to be polite either. I winked at her. "I haven't eaten yet. Sis, could you make one for me too, light on oil and salt?" "Thanks," Mia responded through gritted teeth. "Okay." After breakfast, Lucas still didn't seem to be in a hurry to leave. This time, not only I but also Mia found it strange. She clung to Lucas' arm and coquettishly asked, "Dad, why do you have time to stay home with me this time?" Lucas patted the back of her hand and gently pushed her hand away a bit. "Nothing, I'm setting up a blind date for your sister at home." "Blind date?" Mia and I asked almost in unison. Lucas looked at me. "Go upstairs and tidy up. The person should be here soon." After the initial shock, Mia came to her senses first. She looked at me, her eyes filled with schadenfreude. "Dad, what kind of person did you introduce to sis? Don't tell me it's those uncles around you." Lucas smiled and took a sip of tea. "You'll know when they arrive." With that, Lucas urged me to go upstairs and change. Thinking about my luxury car and mansion, I endured it and obediently went upstairs. I slowly changed my clothes, put on some light makeup, and walked down the stairs, holding the hem of my dress. Just as I sat down, the doorbell rang. Kathy went to open the door. Out of curiosity, I looked up. It was a man in a suit. At a quick glance, he had a good figure. As for his face, being severely nearsighted, I couldn't see clearly. I could only vaguely make out the outline of his features. However, beside me, Mia let out an exclamation. Dad, the person you're introducing to her for a blind date is Frank Anderson. Frank. I repeated the name several times in my mind. It did seem familiar, but I couldn't remember where I'd heard it. While I was lost in thought, the man had already walked over, introduced by Lucas. I looked up at him. Hello, my voice trailed off, unable to continue. I stared at the man in front of me in shock. The man wore an expression of helplessness, exactly the same as when I'd ended his car 3 times yesterday. It was him. I finally remembered why the name seemed familiar. Frank, a famous entrepreneur in the city. He took over the family business at 24. 3 years later, instead of ruining the century-old foundation, he expanded the business significantly. Earlier this year, someone launched an online poll for the most desirable husband in the city. Frank won with more than 3.5 times the votes of the runner-up. At work, I'd heard my colleagues gossiping about him. For example, Frank was secretly married with a child and had married a super-rich woman in her early 40s. Despite his appearance as an entrepreneur, Frank was extremely ruthless and had blood on his hands. Frank had a nephew a few years younger. He'd even snatched his nephew's girlfriend, and the two had been at odds ever since. There were countless such rumors. Did a man like this need a blind date? Pulling myself out of the old rumors, I looked up and met Lucas' expectant gaze. I quickly shook Frank's hand. Hello, my name is Jenny. I'm really sorry about yesterday, but I never expected that the person Lucas introduced to me for a blind date would be you, across from me. The man raised an eyebrow. Who said it was me, huh? I looked up in shock. Frank had already withdrawn his hand and said indifferently, your blind date partner is my nephew. Before I could think, the words blurted out, the nephew whose girlfriend you snatched. As soon as the words were out, the atmosphere suddenly turned awkward. Frank glanced at me. Don't believe all the gossip. Just then, footsteps were heard outside. Uncle, the person shouted and walked in quickly. When he got closer, he respectfully greeted Lucas, Uncle Lucas. I thought to myself that the rumors were wrong. The relationship between these two seemed pretty good. Just as I was thinking, he reached out to Mia. Hello, Andy. Mia was stunned for a moment. Then she glanced at me and smiled. Andy, you seem to have made a mistake. Your blind date partner is over there. As she spoke, Mia casually pointed in my direction. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. Andy quickly regained his composure. I know, but the proper opening line should always come last. With that, he extended his hand in front of me. His knuckles were long and attractive. When introducing himself to me, he even slowed down his speech a bit. Hello, my name is Andy. I'm your blind date partner today. I reached out and shook his hand, noticing the smug curl of Andy's lips because of his quick reaction. The Anderson uncle-nephew pair didn't stay long. They just invited us to a dinner party that night. Yes, us, Mia and I. There was originally only one invitation, but Andy insisted on giving his to Mia and inviting her to go with us. Mia held the invitation, neither saying yes nor no. Instead, she turned to me, looking innocent. Sis, after all, Andy is the blind date partner Dad introduced to you. You won't be angry if I go, will you? Yes, I will. I smiled at her. Sis gets angry easily, so you'd better not go tonight. Mia was left speechless. At that time, Lucas and Frank had already gone out for business. Only the 3 of us were left in the villa, so Andy wasn't as polite. He pressed Mia's hand, firmly clutching the invitation in her hand. It's okay, I gave you the invitation. If anyone's unhappy, tell them to come to me. With that, Andy glanced at Mia, bid us farewell, and left. I took a sip of tea, feeling like laughing. I never expected that Lucas would suddenly introduce a blind date partner to me, but he'd taken a fancy to Mia instead. This little schemer would be even more arrogant now. Sure enough, as soon as Andy left, Mia held the invitation and looked at it again and again, sighing. Sis, today was supposed to be your blind date, but Andy insisted on giving me the invitation. I'm really sorry for ruining your blind date. She examined her newly done nails and chuckled. I should have stayed upstairs today. It's okay. I put down my teacup. I didn't like him anyway, don't you think? That uncle is more appealing. Mia laughed. You mean Frank? Don't daydream. There are plenty of women who want to be with Frank, but every single one of them ended up in a terrible state. Really? I responded absent-mindedly. What came to mind was the man's helpless expression when I'd rear-ended his car 3 times yesterday. This person seemed not as terrifying as the rumors made him out to be. In the evening, the Anderson uncle and nephew came to pick us up for the appointment on time. Mia went for the delicate young lady style. She wore a light pink little evening dress and paired it with a soft makeup look, which really gave her a somewhat delicate little princess vibe. I, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. I wore a deep red long dress, with a rather glamorous makeup look. The long dress had been specially adjusted to fit my figure perfectly. Frank was 5 years older than me. Since I was going to be his female companion tonight, I needed to dress more maturely. Andy must have done it on purpose. In the evening, he drove a 2-seater sports car over and said to me with an apologetic look, "Sorry, there's no room in this car, you can take my uncle's car." As he spoke, he bent down and opened the car door for Mia. He was both gentlemanly and gentle. Sure, I smiled and agreed. It was exactly what I wanted. On the other side, Frank was driving the car himself. However, he didn't get out of the car. Instead, he just rolled down the car window, casually resting his elbow on the window frame and smoking a cigarette. He only put out the cigarette when I got into the car. The car window went up, blocking out the outside noise, and the car became eerily quiet in an instant. We didn't talk during the whole journey. Frank was like an iceberg, and I couldn't find any topics to talk about, so I could only sit there awkwardly, until, when Frank stopped the car at a red light, we were rear-ended. The impact wasn't heavy, but his face turned very dark. When getting out of the car, Frank glanced at me and said in a low voice, "Tell me the truth. Are you an insurance salesperson?" Of course I wasn't. But I still couldn't resist asking, "So, does Mr. Frank want to buy insurance? I can apply for the job right now." With his frequency of getting into car accidents, it would definitely be a big deal. No, Frank slammed the car door and got out. By the time we dealt with it and arrived, we were already over half an hour late. The dinner party had already started. There were a lot of people in the banquet hall, and I saw Lucas at a glance. The man was wearing a flashy deep red suit and was chatting happily with a beautiful woman with a slender waist. I have to say, my father and I were quite a match in our outfits. When I shifted my gaze, I also saw Mia. She was openly holding Andy's arm and chatting and laughing with others. Before entering, I softly asked Frank what my identity should be when attending with him. He said I was his female companion, so I took his arm and made a low-key entrance. Since we were so late, no one noticed us. I held Frank's arm and went straight to where Mia was. As soon as we got closer, we heard her conversation with others. She had been chatting and laughing with others just now, but now she was speaking in a pitiful and tearful voice. Actually, I feel sorry for her in my heart. It's all because of me that she's been wandering outside for so many years. I want to make up for her as much as Dad does. But my sister just won't accept me. The day she came home, I went to open the door for her and even cooked a welcome dinner for her myself. But instead, she slapped me because of something that didn't go her way. After saying this, the people around her were already filled with righteous indignation and were comforting her one after another. I stopped and asked Frank, "What kind of dinner party is this? If I cause trouble, will it be serious?" "It's not serious." Frank seemed to have guessed what I was going to do and added indifferently, "Cause as much trouble as you want, Lucas will back you up." I nodded. I walked over and gently patted Mia on the shoulder. Mia turned around and was startled when she saw me, but she wasn't flustered. Just as she was about to say something, I slapped her across the face. The crisp sound of the slap was particularly audible. I withdrew my hand and chuckled. "Everyone knows that I, the sister who just returned to the family, slapped you. If I don't confirm this slap, it seems like I'm at a loss." I had wanted to do this since last night when Mia secretly spat into the cup I was drinking from, but at that time, Lucas was also at home. Since it was my first day back, I didn't want to make a big scene, so I held back. Today, thanks to her, I had a legitimate reason to slap her. Mia was stunned for a while before she came to her senses. The handprint on her small face was extremely clear. The poor little thing tightly covered her face, and her expression changed from shock to disbelief, and then quickly turned into shame and anger. No longer caring about playing the role of a delicate little princess, Mia suddenly pounced on me, trying to slap me back, but I dodged. Taking advantage of the momentum, she picked up the delicate cup beside her and threw it at me heavily. This throw was too sudden, with the distance being just a few steps. I simply couldn't dodge it. However, At the moment when the cup was about to hit me, Frank suddenly stepped sideways and blocked in front of me. The cup with a gold rim hit his forehead heavily, then fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. The scene suddenly fell into chaos. Because Frank's face was bleeding, I was so scared that I wanted to reach out and check his wound, but I didn't dare to touch it. Frank looked at me. "It's okay, just a scratch." I don't know who handed over a silk handkerchief. Frank took it and casually pressed it against the bleeding wound. He turned his head to look at Mia and said indifferently, "The cup you just threw was a private collection, worth $13 million. Pay for it." Mia froze. She looked at the wound on Frank's forehead, both shocked and scared, and couldn't help but exclaim, $13 million. I couldn't help but tug at Frank's sleeve and asked him in a low voice, "Is the cup really that valuable?" "It isn't," Frank said calmly, "but my face is worth it." I was stunned for 2 seconds, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. His face was worth it, but thinking about his net worth, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with what he said. Mia stood there with a sullen face and didn't say a word. There were whispers all around, but no one dared to come out and smooth things over at the moment. The atmosphere was a bit tense for a while, until Lucas pushed through the crowd and came up. Lucas was a shrewd man. As soon as he came up, without saying a word, he paid for his daughter. He immediately handed his bank card to his assistant to deal with it. The way he handled it so straightforwardly made me feel a bit sorry for his money. I knew Lucas was rich, but this compensation was enough to make him feel the pinch. However, Lucas didn't seem to care. This man in his 40s or 50s apologized to others for his disobedient daughter, while also asking about Frank's injury with concern and arranging for me to apply medicine to Frank. The staff in the banquet hall had already brought a first aid kit. When I was sent by Lucas to the corner of the banquet hall to apply medicine to Frank, I suddenly figured it out. Lucas wants to cooperate with you, right? Frank sat on the chair, waiting for me to apply the medicine to him. Hearing this, he glanced at me and curled his lips. Smart, so Lucas was truly happy to pay this sum of money. Although Lucas was rich, he was still far from being able to get on good terms with Frank. That's why he tried every means to arrange this so-called blind date between me and Frank's nephew. Today, Lucas knew that Frank was asking for an exorbitant price, but he still paid it readily. If Frank accepted the money, he would truly have a chance to cooperate with Frank. So, this deal wasn't a loss for Lucas, after figuring out all these twists and turns. I shook my head. The business world was indeed a deep and complicated place. Even someone like Lucas, who seemed carefree on the surface, was actually careful in some aspects. Coming back to my senses, I realized that Frank had been waiting for me for a long time. I quickly applied the medicine to him. The wound wasn't big, and it was indeed just a flesh wound. It just looked a bit scary because of the blood. After applying the medicine, I saw a large-sized band-aid in the first aid kit. It had a floral pattern and looked quite cute. Without thinking much, I put it on him. However, when I looked up and saw the serious-looking CEO with a floral band-aid on his face, I thought it was both out of place and a bit cute. Just as I was about to take a few more looks, Frank had already stood up and left. When I realized it, the unaware Mr. Frank had already walked past many people with that floral band-aid on his forehead. Everyone was staring at the floral band-aid, but no one dared to laugh. I hesitated for a while and silently swallowed the words that I wanted to call out to Frank. Telling him now would be like seeking death. After the banquet ended, Lucas deliberately said that he had something to do and wouldn't go back to Rose Mansion. He asked Frank to send me back. When speaking, Lucas's eyes kept glancing at the floral band-aid on Frank's forehead. It made my heart skip a beat, and I was afraid that Frank would find out on the spot. Fortunately, after looking at it a few times, Lucas just curled his lips and didn't mention it. Just like that, on the way home, I got into Frank's luxury car again. However, the moment I got into the car, Frank suddenly stopped. I turned around curiously and saw him staring intently at the floral band-aid reflected in the rearview mirror. There was a few seconds of silence. Frank turned to look at me. "Jenny." I could only force a smile and change the subject. "How about I drive on the way back?" Frank fastened his seatbelt. "I just bought this car 3 days ago. I don't want to change it yet." Thankfully, Frank didn't pursue the matter of the band-aid any further. During the whole journey, he didn't take off the band-aid until he dropped me off at the door of my house. The huge and cute band-aid was still on his forehead. After saying goodbye to Frank, I lifted the hem of my dress and entered the house. I unexpectedly saw a strange man sitting in the living room. Looking closely at his facial features, he had a bit of a resemblance to me, of course. He looked more like a younger version of Lucas. The man was wearing a light-colored shirt and sitting casually on the sofa. He was holding a glass of wine in his hand and chatting and laughing intimately with Mia. When he heard the sound of the door opening, he slowly looked in my direction. I knew who he was, Simon, my biological brother with the same parents, come to think of it. This was the first time we had met. After looking at each other, I walked over and politely called him brother. However, no one responded to me. Simon glanced at me, then directly turned his gaze away. He rubbed Mia's hair beside him and said something with hidden meaning. Mia, don't worry. If anyone makes you feel wronged, brother will definitely get justice for you. Even a fool could tell that he wanted to support Mia. I was silent for 2 seconds, actually. I was hesitating whether to have an open confrontation or not. After all, he was my biological brother. But then I thought, even if he was my biological brother, he didn't show me any respect when we first met, so there was nothing for me to be worried about. After figuring it out, I walked to the table, poured myself a glass of water to moisten my throat, and then smiled and said, "Don't wait for later. I'm right here. How do you want to get justice for your sister? Come on." After saying that, I sat down at the table. After I took the initiative, Simon was instead stunned. It was obvious that Simon wasn't a tough character. If he was really hot-tempered, he probably would have slapped me for his sister by now. I guessed that maybe in his imagination, I, the so-called sister who grew up in a small mountain village, should be submissive and afraid to speak, and would swallow my anger even if I was wronged. Mia beside him was still pulling at his sleeve and complaining about her grievances. Simon was in a dilemma and walked towards me. "Did you hit Mia at the banquet just now?" My biological brother stood in front of the table and looked at me, his tone cold and stern. "Yes," I replied naturally. "Your sister asked for it. She told everyone that I hit her last night. To help her make up the lie, I had to slap her on the spot to confirm it. And, your dear sister also retaliated. She threw a cup at me. And Lucas had to pay $13 million for her." I deliberately clicked my tongue and sighed. "More than $10 million, brother. You know Lucas only has you as his son. All his money will be yours eventually. I feel sorry for you just hearing about it." After saying that, I put down the water cup and turned to go upstairs. Simon's face was as ugly as it could be. When I walked up the stairs, I could still hear Simon asking Mia in a low voice whether it was true or not, and his dear sister was stammering and making excuses. I smiled and went upstairs to my room. I was in a good mood today and should be able to have a good sleep. When I went downstairs in the morning, I was blocked by Mia at the stairway. The girl was wearing a plain dress today, with her long hair flowing down. She blocked my way near the stairway on the first floor, with her arms crossed. Mia looked at me coldly. "You don't really think that just because you slapped me last night, this matter is over, do you?" It seemed that since there was no one else in the villa, Mia spoke without any scruples. "Jenny, don't think you can play the role of a runaway rich daughter coming back home in a high-profile way. You grew up in a small mountain village for more than 20 years. What do you have to compare with me?" When mentioning these things, there was a look of arrogance in the girl's eyes. "Since I was a child, I've had the best food, clothing, housing, and transportation. I've received the best education and have been to countless countries. Jenny, I've seen more of the world than you've eaten meals. I'm the eldest daughter of the Roberts family who has been doted on since childhood. What right do you, a latecomer and a fake, have to replace me?" This series of questions was annoying to hear and also made me want to laugh a bit. I rubbed the space between my eyebrows. "First of all, don't confuse the order. It's true that I came later, but you're the fake one. The reason you were the center of attention for the past 20-odd years wasn't because you were some young lady, it was because everyone mistook you for me. Lucas found me and asked me to return to the family. I never thought of coming back to compete with you for anything. You don't have to be so hostile." And I was about to say more when there was a sudden sound of footsteps outside. Since the window was open, I could hear it quite clearly. Mia, who was standing opposite me, suddenly smiled. She spoke softly, in a voice that only the two of us could hear. "But I still hate you, sister." As soon as the words fell, Mia suddenly picked up the extremely exquisite vase beside her. At the moment the door opened, she smashed it onto my hand. I didn't have time to react. The vase hit the back of my hand and then fell to the ground. it instantly shattered into 7 or 8 pieces. The moment the vase fell, Mia's sobbing voice spread throughout the villa. "Sister, don't smash it." The door opened. Lucas and Simon seemed to have just come back from a morning run. As soon as they entered the door, they stared at the scene in front of them in shock. Mia knelt on the ground halfway, tears streaming down her face. She reached out her trembling hand to pick up the fragments of the vase. She deliberately ran her finger across the sharp edge of the fragment, and blood immediately oozed out, but she seemed not to notice and continued picking up the pieces. She also choked up and accused, "Sister, if you're in a bad mood, you can hit me or scold me, but why did you take it out on the vase? This is the only keepsake left by Mom before she passed away. Don't you even want to leave me this little bit of memory?" Mia's sobbing pulled the thoughts of the two men at the door back. Simon walked over quickly, his eyes red as he stared at the fragments on the ground. I frowned and explained, "Mia broke it. I didn't even touch the vase." Simon didn't respond. 2 seconds later, he raised his head and slapped me hard across the face without any warning. "This was Mom's keepsake. How dare you?" With a slap, my ears immediately rang. My head felt a bit dizzy. I bit my lip hard, and the spreading pain helped me regain some clarity. Simon's eyes turned a bit red. It seemed that he really cared about that vase. He glared at me angrily and then squatted down to pick up the fragments. Lucas, on the other hand, stood at the door the whole time without saying a word. When the atmosphere was tense, I spoke in a low voice. "I didn't break it. When you came in, Mia picked up the vase and deliberately dropped it on the ground. Then she squatted down and put on an act. Whether you believe it or not, that's the truth. Having been wrongly accused, without surveillance, I simply couldn't prove my innocence. Moreover, they wouldn't believe me either." As soon as I finished speaking, Mia pushed towards me, while scolding me for talking nonsense. She also accused me of being too vicious and deliberately breaking the keepsake of our late mother. As she spoke, she imitated Simon and raised her hand to slap me in the face. Suddenly, I grabbed Mia's wrist and slapped her twice in return, including the slap I just received. To be honest, a delicate young lady like Mia didn't have much strength in her hands. Since I had to help my parents with farm work since I was a child, I was much stronger than her, so it was easy to fight back. After being slapped twice, Mia was stunned. I'm afraid she didn't expect that even with the two people who could stand up for her beside her, she would still suffer a loss. I crossed my arms over my chest and looked at her coldly. "This slap is for your dear brother, and the other slap, you know very well who broke the vase just now. This slap is for the mother who raised you for 20 years. After saying that, I turned to look at Lucas at the door. From beginning to end, his brows were furrowed, and he didn't say a word. Only when I looked at him did Lucas speak. "All right, clean up the fragments. I'll find a professional this afternoon to see if it can be restored." He sighed. "We're all family. What's the point of fighting like this?" This farce ended with Lucas's final attempt to smooth things over. That night, I moved back to the school dormitory. Today, I completely fell out with that brother and sister. Since Lucas doesn't usually live in Rose Mansion, if I stayed there alone, I would just be making myself unhappy. I'm not that stupid. Moreover, the school dormitory was quite comfortable to live in. At least, it was much more comfortable than the cold and desolate Rose Mansion. The day after moving back to school, at noon after school, I went to the school gate to pick up a package. I immediately saw Lucas's car. When he saw me, Lucas rolled down the car window and waved at me. After hesitating for a moment, I walked over. "Are you looking for Mia?" Mia and I were in the same school, but we were in different departments. Lucas raised his eyebrows high. "I'm looking for you." He patted the passenger seat. "Get in the car. Dad will take you to try something new." No. After refusing, I couldn't help but ask, "Do you also think I broke that vase?" Lucas leaned against the car window and lit a cigarette. "No, I don't. Mia has been spoiled by us since she was a child. Moreover, your mother's death had a great impact on her." He gave a bitter smile. "It was the same for me. These are actually just the little tricks that the child is used to. Her heart is not bad, but we've just spoiled her and made her a bit arrogant. You've been wronged as the elder sister." As he spoke, Lucas stuffed another bank card into my hand. I could imagine that there must be a lot of money in it. He patted the back of my hand. "Take it, buy whatever you want when you're living at school." But when I looked at the bank card in my hand, I suddenly felt extremely disgusted. Lucas was rich, so, for him, everything could be solved with money. I was slandered and insulted by Mia, Just because I was the elder sister and wasn't spoiled by them since childhood, I was expected to just endure it. Perhaps in Lucas's eyes, a child like me who came from a small mountain village and hadn't seen much of the world should be happy enough to forget all the unpleasantness with a large bank card. But I wasn't like that. I threw the card back into the car. Then I rummaged through my bag and threw back the bank card he gave me last time as well. I'm giving these 2 cards back to you. How about you go and slap Mia twice? Lucas was stunned and didn't say a word. I smiled. See, you also know that money can't buy everything. Then there's no need to use money to appease me. After saying that, I turned around and left. For Lucas, he had a son to carry on the family line and a delicate daughter whom he had raised for more than 20 years. His biological daughter, who had just been found and only had a blood relationship but no real affection, was just a gimmick for him to hype up in front of the media. Behind me, Lucas seemed to call out to me. I didn't look back, and he didn't call out a second time either. After leaving Lucas, I went to the cafeteria to eat alone. After getting my food, I found a secluded place to put it down and then went to get a bowl of soup. The place I chose was rather secluded. When I went back with the soup, there weren't many people around. Accustomed to being alone, I watched a drama on my phone and ate by myself. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I felt that there was something strange on the chopsticks. I looked down. There was actually a bug wrapped in the rice that I was about to bring to my mouth. Fortunately, the bug was black. I noticed something was wrong when I caught a glimpse of it out of the corner of my eye. Staring at the bug in silence for a while, I took out a tissue, wrapped the bug up, threw away the food, and turned to leave the cafeteria. I had looked at Mia's class schedule. Coincidentally, her class schedule was full this afternoon, so I calculated the time and went to Rose's mansion before she finished class. Kathy had just finished cooking. I lied that I came back to get something. Then, when Kathy wasn't paying attention, I buried the dead bug that I had at noon in the rice in Mia's bowl. Mia had to use her special bowls and dishes when eating. If not, I really wouldn't have been able to add something to her food. After finishing everything, I set up an old phone in a hidden place and made a video call with my phone. I didn't want to miss such a wonderful scene. So, that night, I lay on the sofa bed and watched as Mia in the camera lay in front of the trash can, vomiting her heart out. When she found the bug in the rice, only half of the dead bug was left. After vomiting enough, Mia smashed things in the dining room to vent her anger. Then she saw the phone that I had set up in the hidden place. She was stunned for 2 seconds and then ran over to pick up the phone. Jenny. Then there was a series of her angry curses. I held the phone and laughed. How was it? Was the protein just now delicious? At the mention of the half bug, Mia retched again. Then she angrily smashed the phone. The video was forced to end, but I laughed. Watching Mia eat the dead bug raw on the other side of the camera, it was quite satisfying. The next day, at noon, I had a bit of a shadow over the cafeteria food and was going to buy spicy hot pot near the school gate. However, as soon as I left the school gate, I saw that the students passing by were all staring at the roadside. Out of curiosity, I also took a look. Frank, looking more closely, it really was him. The combination of a luxury car and a mature man in a suit attracted all the passing students to stop and take a look. While I was in a daze, I saw Frank wave his hand in my direction. The man casually raised his arm, his movement casual, but it attracted a lot of eyes to look in my direction. My face turned red. What was this guy doing? After hesitating for a few seconds, I still chose to go over. Frank, were you looking for me? Out of Lucas's circle, I instantly returned to my student identity. When I saw Frank again, I somehow lacked confidence and spoke more politely without realizing it. Frank raised his eyebrows slightly. Get in the car. I originally wanted to refuse, but there were too many curious looks from the passers-by around, afraid that if I stayed for too long, it would cause misunderstandings. I got into the car parked on the roadside with him. Frank took me to a nearby coffee shop. After ordering 2 cups of coffee, he got straight to the point. I want you to design a necklace for me. Design a necklace. Although I was majoring in jewelry design, with Frank's wealth, as long as he beckoned, a large number of famous designers would be eager to come. It really shouldn't be me, a junior student. Perhaps seeing my confusion, Frank said calmly, many well-known designers are too impetuous. Sometimes, their design inspiration is not as good as that of students. You have simple thoughts and may be more suitable. This necklace is very important to me. During the design process, I may put forward a lot of opinions or ideas. Some designers who have been famous for a long time mind this a lot. As he spoke, Frank offered me a price that made my heart skip a beat. I immediately agreed. I'd be a fool not to. Frank was rich and seemingly naive when it came to spending money. The price he offered was enough to ensure that I wouldn't have to worry about food and drink for the rest of my life. Of course, the difficulty was definitely extremely high, but with such a temptation in front of me, I had to give it a try. The day I got into Frank's car, rumors spread everywhere. Someone took a photo and posted it in the community, depicting me in a very bad light. The comments section even dug up my identity and name completely. Without thinking, I knew that the people who took the lead in guiding these public opinions must have been found by Mia. I glanced at it a few times and then put away my phone. I didn't need to pay attention to it. The more I tried to clarify, the more people would say that I was desperate and that I had been hit where it hurt. On the contrary, if I ignored it, in a few days, everyone would naturally forget about it, except for my classmates, who would still remember who I was. However, 2 days later, I suddenly received a message from the counselor. Due to dormitory transfers, all my roommates had been replaced. I was left alone to share a dormitory with 3 girls from other departments. What a strange transfer. Without thinking, I knew that it was the doing of Miss Roberts again. These days, her continuous small actions had been showing me that in many things, with money, one could indeed do whatever they wanted. I heard that when Mia came to report to the university as a freshman, Lucas accompanied her. He thought the school's accommodation conditions were too poor, so he directly donated 2 dormitory buildings with a wave of his hand. For Mia, changing a dormitory was of course not a difficult thing. Come to think of it, the female dormitory I was living in now was built with the money my biological father provided. I knew that Mia had gone to the trouble of stuffing 3 girls who looked like little hooligans into my dormitory just to cause me trouble, so when I returned to the dormitory at noon the next day and found that all my things had been cleared out, I wasn't surprised at all. My bed was empty, with nothing left. I opened the cabinet, it was also empty. From the corner of the dormitory, the laughter of the 3 of them could be heard. I glanced at them and then turned to leave the room. Sure enough, in the trash can downstairs, I found my missing luggage. At noon that day, the students passing by all curiously looked at the girl who was bending over and rummaging through the trash can. That was me. Some of the luggage was thrown away, and some was washed. I went to the school gate to buy some daily necessities again. From beginning to end, I didn't say a word to the 3 of them, even though I knew very well that they were the ones who did it. From the other end of the dormitory, their whispers and laughter could be heard from time to time. In the middle of it, I heard someone raise their voice a bit, and I heard 3 words, loser. Obviously, these 3 words were referring to me, but I still didn't respond, so they laughed even more heartily. In the afternoon, I didn't have any classes, so I lay in bed and slept for the whole afternoon. The 3 girls in the same dormitory were from other departments, and our class schedules were not the same. After they finished class, they went to have dinner together. It was already dark when they came back. Only when they opened the door did they find that the door was locked from the inside by me. The sound of them pounding on the door was very loud. In bed, I comfortably turned over and ignored them. The corridor of our dormitory was a semi-enclosed balcony. The wind was strong tonight, so I let them stay outside and get blown by the wind for a while longer. After more than 10 minutes, the knocking on the door sounded again, and along with it was the voice of the dormitory auntie. Only then did I slowly sit up, get out of bed, and open the door. Facing the dormitory auntie's questioning, I just said that I had a cold and was sleeping, so I didn't hear the knocking. The 3 roommates walked into the dormitory complaining, but they were all stunned at the same time. On their 3 beds, there was also only the bare bedboard, completely empty. I leaned against the wall and smiled happily. At this time, the stores near the school that sold mattresses and bedding should all be closed, and our school has very strict management. The dormitory is checked on time every night. It's not very realistic for them to go out and stay in a hotel for one night, so they might have to sleep on the bare bedboard tonight. Jenny, I shrugged. You threw my things away once, and I threw yours back. We're even. As I spoke, I looked at the dormitory auntie at the door, who also seemed a bit stunned. I sniffed and pretended to be pitiful. Auntie, they threw all my luggage into the trash can downstairs at noon first. I didn't have a quilt to cover myself with, so I caught a chill and slept so deeply just now. I didn't mention a word about me throwing their luggage away. The auntie had an understanding expression. That's why I saw so many new bedding sets in the trash can today. No wonder. As she spoke, the auntie shook her head. You guys should solve the little conflicts between roommates by yourselves. I'm going to check the dormitories. The dormitory door closed heavily. I looked at the three angry faces in front of me and chuckled. Oh, by the way, I deliberately threw your things far away in case they would make you feel bad. I'm afraid you won't be able to get them back. I had been moving luggage all afternoon and was really exhausted. After saying that, I was going to go back to bed and continue sleeping. As soon as I reached the bedside, I was stopped. The three of them blocked me and were shouting and demanding that I compensate them for the money for their luggage. Compensate you? I laughed. Sure, I was worried that you wouldn't mention this. As I spoke, I took out a scratched Hermes bag from the cabinet. Come on, let's discuss how to compensate you. When I picked it up from the trash can, it was already scratched. As I spoke, I went to the official website to find the same style of bag and took a photo of it along with the price and showed it in front of them. The three of them fell silent immediately. After a while, someone still stubbornly said that my bag was a fake. I picked up my phone. How about this? I'll call the police and let the police identify the value of this bag. By the way, we can also figure out how much money you need to compensate me for privately destroying my belongings, out of guilt. The three of them quickly refused. They changed their previous attitude and smiled, saying that since we had thrown each other's luggage away, we were even and neither of us should care about it anymore. I smiled and didn't make things difficult for them anymore, because, when I used this bag to carry things from Lucas, it was already broken. I just used it to scare them. These girls in their 20s panicked immediately when they heard about calling the police and compensating money. They didn't even dare to carefully investigate whether the bag was scratched after they threw it into the trash can. The farce finally ended. I went to bed and slept peacefully, and my three roommates, they covered themselves with their coats and slept on the bare bedboard all night. I don't know if they didn't have any friends or if they were too stubborn, but none of them went to squeeze into the beds of their friends in other dormitories for the night. That night, I had a rare good dream. As for my roommates, they turned over from time to time and sniffled. Frank was right. This business of his was indeed not easy to take on. Since I accepted his design order, I have to meet with Frank almost every day. Regarding this necklace, Frank seems to have countless design inspirations. One day he tells me a story he accidentally discovered, and the next day he talks about an inspiration that suddenly flashed in his mind. But he is so meticulous in his work that there is really nothing to criticize. Every time we meet, he will make an appointment with me in advance and confirm the time. In his words, in order to keep my inspiration from running out, he will take me to different restaurants every time we meet. He claims that this is to keep me feeling fresh all the time so that I can create better. Moreover, to make up for me coming out every day to listen to his inspirations and keep modifying the drafts. Almost every time we meet, Frank will bring me a small gift. For example, an exquisitely crafted umbrella on a rainy day, a small bottle of sunscreen on a sunny day, a hand warmer on a cold day. These gifts are not expensive, but they are very thoughtful. So, even though Frank is so demanding, it's still hard to dislike him. Also, after having meals together for a period of time, the relationship between Frank and me has become much closer. I've discovered, this man, who is worth a fortune and is rumored to have a ruthless temper, actually doesn't have any airs at all. When we go out to eat, he speaks softly to the waiters and thanks them gently. Sometimes, halfway through a meal with him, I even have a feeling of being in a trance, as if we are more like we are in a relationship, but I quickly cast this thought aside. Frank and me, how could that be possible? At noon on this day, as usual, Frank took me to a restaurant near the school for a meal and put forward 2 suggestions for modifying the draft. Before we parted, he also gave me a bottle of autumn pear paste. It was autumn recently, and the weather was dry. I was a bit inflamed, and my throat was hoarse from coughing. I have to say that Frank's small gifts always hit the mark and are impossible to refuse. When I was about to get out of the car, he handed me the autumn pear paste and said softly, "It's handmade. It should have a good effect. Remember to drink it when you get back." I held the bottle of autumn pear paste and walked a long way. When I turned around, I could still see Frank's car parked by the roadside. After that time, to avoid suspicion, Frank always parked his car a street away from the school, and every time, after I walked a street and turned around to look back, His car was still there. When I reached the school gate, I suddenly found that there were a lot of people gathered ahead. I'm not someone who likes to join in the fun, and I didn't plan to go up and take a look, but when I casually glanced over, I saw a familiar face. Mia was standing in the middle of the crowd, pointing at a simply dressed farmer and shouting abuse. The other person endured the gazes of the crowd, keeping his head down and not saying a word. Mia was scolding very harshly. She called him trash who came out of the mountains and wanted to climb up the social ladder. She accused him of trying to suck her dry. She called him shameless. The man never refuted a single word throughout. Several times he shook his head and wanted to leave, but Mia stopped him. As a young lady who has been pampered since childhood, Mia is never afraid of being watched by people. On the contrary, she seems to have a bit of a histrionic personality. The more people pay attention to her, the more energetic she becomes. I was stunned for a few seconds, then quickly pushed through the crowd and ran over. Dad, the man's body stiffened, and he turned around. His eyes were red. This strong farmer, who had been proud all his life, was now holding back his tears and didn't even scold Mia back a single word. In terms of blood relationship, Mia is his biological daughter. The whispers around became even louder. My dad was holding a bag of fruits and smiled. Dad brought some newly picked fruits from home. I've already asked your classmate to send your share to your dormitory. This share is for Mia. My dad didn't finish his sentence, but it was obvious that Mia didn't want it and even scolded him. I turned to look at Mia. Can't you talk properly? Scolding your own biological father in public. Are you even human? Father, Mia retorted in a shrill voice. He's not my dad. I only have one dad, and his name is Lucas. He never raised me for a single day, and now he wants me to give him money. Does he deserve it? Mia crossed her arms and spoke in a contemptuous tone. I didn't bother to pay attention to her anymore. I took my dad to a restaurant near the school. Haven't eaten yet, right? The food here is quite delicious. Eat more later, my dad responded, but he seemed a bit absent-minded. Dad, is there something wrong at home? I know him. If he just came to send fruits, he would definitely tell me in advance. He wouldn't be in such a restless state either, when I asked. My dad hesitated for a long time. Finally, he sighed and told me that my mom was ill, in the late stage of liver cancer. The chemotherapy costs were extremely high. After Lucas took me back, he once gave my parents a sum of money as compensation for raising me for more than 20 years, but that money was quickly used up to cover the medical expenses. Now, my dad has several jobs a day and has borrowed money from almost all our relatives and friends. Having no other choice, he came to ask Mia. He sighed. I feel sorry for that girl. I only gave birth to her but didn't raise her, so I couldn't bring myself to ask. But I thought that if I borrowed such a large sum of money from you just after you returned to the Roberts family, I was afraid that you would have a bad impression of your dad. You two have just recognized each other, and there's not much emotional foundation between you yet, but Mia is different. I can see that Mr. Roberts loves her very much. And she grew up in the Roberts family. That's why I tentatively asked if she could lend me some money. I will pay it back, as long as your mom gets through this chemotherapy. The doctor said that her condition should be more stable later, and then I can get one more job to pay back the money. But not only did Mia refuse, she also scolded him harshly in public. I listened quietly and couldn't say a word for a long time. Liver cancer, in the late stage, how could it be possible? In the small restaurant, I held my dad's hand and cried silently for a long time. Finally, I picked up a tissue to wipe my tears and choked out, "It's okay, Dad. You can stay at the hotel near our school first. I'll raise the money tonight, and we'll go back tomorrow to treat Mom's illness." Unfortunately, I had already returned the card that Lucas gave me. After thinking it over, I settled my dad in a budget hotel near the school and dialed Frank's number. This was the first time I took the initiative to call him. The phone rang only once before it was answered. "What's wrong?" Frank's lowered voice sounded in my ear, and somehow it made me feel at ease. I tentatively asked him if I could advance a part of the payment for the design draft. Actually, it was a bit embarrassing to say this. My design draft wasn't even finished, and I wanted to ask him for a part of the payment in advance. But Frank agreed very readily. After asking for my bank card number, Frank's voice was very low. "It will be credited to your account within 10 minutes, but after agreeing, he asked for the reason. Perhaps my desire to talk was too strong at that moment, and I couldn't help but tell him everything in detail. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, then he said in a low voice, "It's okay, the money will be credited to your account within 10 minutes. I'll send you back tomorrow morning." I wanted to refuse, but Frank directly made the decision. The phone was hung up, and I stared blankly at the busy tone in my ear. The next morning, Frank sent me a message very early. I asked the counselor for leave. Just as I was about to go to the budget hotel to find my dad, I met Frank at the school gate. He parked the car at the hotel entrance and then walked to the school gate to wait for me. Frank wasn't dressed in a suit today. He was just wearing an ordinary casual outfit. He was almost 30 years old, but the way he leaned against the tree and lit a cigarette gave off a faint sense of youthfulness. Of course, the so-called sense of youthfulness vanished instantly the moment he raised his head. Frank has a pair of very aggressive eyes. When his gaze falls on me, I always have the illusion of being seen through in an instant. People who have been in the business world always have a special sharpness in their eyes. While I was lost in thought, Frank had already walked over. "Let's go." I nodded and followed behind him. Frank accompanied me to pick up my dad and then drove us home himself. Sitting in Frank's luxury car, my dad was very uncomfortable. He only sat on the edge of the seat, for fear of dirtying Frank's car. To my surprise, all the way, Frank chatted with my dad. The aloof Mr. Frank seemed to disappear. The man driving in the front seat became approachable. After a few hours' drive, Frank sent us to the central hospital in our hometown county. However, when we entered the hospital, Frank took out a lot of nourishing products from the trunk, saying that they were for my mom. My dad thanked him repeatedly, rubbing his hands slightly, and feeling even more uncomfortable. In the ward, after seeing my mom, I finally let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, although it was already in the late stage, my mom's complexion was still okay. And she didn't look as haggard and weak as I had imagined. After greeting her, just then a nurse came to change my mom's drip and reminded us that the trash can in the ward needed to be emptied. I quickly agreed. However, before I could move, Frank, who was standing next to the trash can, took the initiative to bend down, tied up the garbage bag, and turned around to carry it out. I was even a bit stunned. With Frank's wealth, I'm afraid he has never emptied the trash at his own home, right? And throughout the whole day that followed, Frank proved with his actions that at this moment, he wasn't Mr. Frank in the business world, but just Frank. He bought food, delivered food, and bought daily necessities. He queued up with a thermos to get hot water and used a wash basin to fetch water. Frank took the initiative to help with all these things. In fact, for him, these are things that his assistant and nanny usually do, and he doesn't need to lift a finger at all. My mom has a forthright personality and likes to joke in daily life. During dinner that night, my mom smiled and asked Frank, "Frank, are you in love with our Jenny?" My face turned red. "Mom," I turned around, wanting to explain to Frank, but he spoke first. The man sitting by the window smiled and replied without any hesitation, "Yes, Auntie has good judgment." After that, no one talked about this topic anymore. But everyone's reactions were completely different. My mom couldn't stop smiling. And my dad was busy feeding her. He is shy and honest by nature. Although he didn't say a word, the corners of his mouth were slightly pursed. Frank still looked calm and composed. Only my ears were burning hot throughout. Frank stayed in a hotel near the hospital. In the evening, we went to have a meal alone. For the first time, Frank accompanied me to eat at a small roadside restaurant, which was my favorite barbecue restaurant when I was at school. At that time, a skewer of grilled meat only cost $1. The boss was very kind. When we students went there with $3 or $5 and ordered a few skewers of meat, the boss would happily grill them for us. After Lucas recognized me and took me home, he also took me to have some delicacies from land and sea a few times, but it always felt like something was missing. The store was very small and shabby. When we took our seats, Frank frowned slightly at the slightly sticky tabletop. But he didn't say anything. I took out wet wipes from my bag and carefully wiped the table. There weren't many people in the store, and the grilled meat was served quickly. I also ordered a lot of beer. Grilled meat without beer always feels like it lacks soul. That day, we drank a lot of wine. I looked at the man sitting across the table, accompanying me to eat skewers and drink beer, and I was a bit dazed, in a trance. I could still remember what he looked like in a suit. In the small store with few people, we talked a lot. We talked about his rigid life and the boy I had a crush on when I was at school. I once had a crush on a boy, He was tall and thin and waist most handsome in the class. The boys seemed to like me too. He always treated me differently from the other girls in the class. He would chat with me, stuff a pile of snacks into my desk every morning, and even throw a bottle of mineral water at those who spoke ill of me. But just when I thought he liked me too, I accidentally met him. He came out of a hotel hand in hand with the class flower of the next class. They looked so intimate. Just like that, my secret love affair ended without a proper conclusion. Later, I realized that those simple shows of affection didn't really count as love. Most of the time, they were just a signal of wanting to date. When I told Frank these things, he laughed and said that such a young boy wasn't suitable for me. Then what kind of man is suitable for me? Taking advantage of the alcohol, I asked this question. Frank smiled softly and poured me a cup of warm tea. Someone like me, someone who can take care of you. I didn't say anything, but my heart was pounding. After leaving the small store, Frank said he wanted to take a look at the school I went to when I was a student, so I took him to my high school. We couldn't enter the school gate, so I took him to stand at the school gate and told him which classroom I used to have classes in and roughly where I did the break exercises on the playground. I told him about the interesting things I remembered from high school. When the cold wind suddenly blew up, he lowered his head and asked me if I had ever thought, when I was at school, that one day someone would confess to me at the school gate. Yes, of course I had. Who hasn't fantasized about such things? Blown by the wind, the alcohol made me feel even more tipsy. I enthusiastically told him that I had once fantasized, when I was at school, that someone would confess to me at the school gate, but it shouldn't just be a confession. He shouldn't ask if I could be his girlfriend. He should ask me if the wind was gentle today, if the sunset was romantic today. He should ask me if the moonlight was beautiful tonight. The thoughts when I was at school were always romantic and naive. At that time, I thought, liking someone meant sharing the beauty of the sunset, the gentleness of the wind, sharing the beauty of the moonlight. After I finished speaking, Frank didn't say anything for a long time. Through the iron gate, we quietly looked at the school playground. When I was lost in thought, Frank's deliberately lowered voice suddenly sounded beside me. Jenny, he asked, so, is the wind gentle today? Is the sunset romantic today? After a slight pause, he turned to look at me. Is the moonlight beautiful tonight? I couldn't say a word. My childish fantasy from my school days suddenly became a reality, and I was a bit stunned. Moreover, the person who was willing to play along with my childishness was Frank. This extreme contrast, together with his words just now, made my heart beat rapidly. Suddenly, I had an inspiration in my mind. So, at this moment when the layer between us was about to be broken, I left Frank behind and took a taxi home by myself. After staying up all night, I finally drew the style of the necklace that flashed through my mind. Moreover, it met all of Frank's requirements for the necklace. The next morning, I appeared in front of Frank with a pair of dark circles under my eyes. I handed that design draft to Frank. There was also a dark patch under his eyes. It seemed that he didn't sleep well last night either. Frank was very satisfied and immediately asked his assistant to transfer the remaining payment to my bank card in full. Seeing that my mom was in a good condition, Frank drove me back the next afternoon. The chemotherapy was scheduled for next week, and Frank would send me here again at that time. I thought that after that night, the relationship between Frank and me would change in some way. However, Frank didn't come to find me for several consecutive days. I was a bit disappointed, but I didn't have the nerve to ask. After calming down, I thought about it. Maybe Frank's admission in the ward that night was just to make my mom, the patient, happy. But, later, at the school gate, he asked about the wind, the moon, and the sunset. How could that be explained? I couldn't answer that question. At noon, Judy from the next dormitory begged me to accompany her to buy some things at the back gate of the school. We had a pretty good relationship usually, so I agreed. However, after walking for a while out of the back gate of the school, when we passed by an alley, we suddenly heard a girl screaming for help from the depths of it. I was stunned for a moment and then quickly ran in. There were two girls who had pinned another girl to the ground and were kicking her frantically. The girl was lying on the ground, holding her head tightly with both hands and crying for mercy. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I quickly ran up and helped the girl on the ground to her feet. Judy also arrived shortly after. Seeing that there were more of us, the two girls left after saying a few harsh words. I helped the girl on the ground up, but I was shocked. I didn't know what those two girls had done just now. she had blood all over her face, and some dirt from the ground was smeared on the blood. She looked rather terrifying. Judy and I quickly took her to a nearby hospital. However, I never dreamed that I would end up on the trending list because of this. That night, a post suddenly appeared. A girl revealed on the internet that there was a girl in XX university who, because her boyfriend had struck up a conversation with this girl, had found people to beat her up, resulting in a broken nasal bone and various degrees of external injuries all over her body, and she posted a few selfies of her injuries, the blood on her face, the blue and purple marks, and the bruises on her arms, and public opinion fermented instantly. Soon, some classmates from our school exposed on the internet that the perpetrator was Jenny from Class X, Department X, School X. I had kindly saved someone, but I had instead become the perpetrator. But at that time, Judy was there watching. I quickly went to her to ask her to testify for me. However, Judy flatly denied it. She said that that day, I had forced her to accompany me to pick a fight with that girl. She said that she hadn't laid a hand throughout the whole process that day. She had tried to stop it but couldn't. Judy had given false testimony. We didn't have any conflicts usually, and in fact, our relationship had always been quite good. The reason for her sudden betrayal was very simple. I didn't need to think hard to know. It was Mia's doing again. This incident quickly fermented on the internet. Even the pictures of Lucas and Frank respectively picking me up in luxury cars before were also exposed. Everyone speculated and thought that I was the kind of girl with a lot of sugar daddies and was promiscuous. The comments section was even more unsightly. Moreover, later on, more and more people claimed to be witnesses and provided some photos of me bullying the girl. The photo of me pulling her up, with a carefully chosen angle, became a photo of me pushing her down. I was wiping the blood off her face. Taken from behind me, it became a photo of me having just beaten the blood out of her face. In the photo, the girl who was beaten looked at me with a look of horror on her face. This incident was a prearranged trap from beginning to end. When this incident became popular all over the internet, the school couldn't sit still either. I wasby the school leaders. After seeing the public opinion and exposés on the internet, the school authorities determined that I was the perpetrator. For the sake of the school's reputation, they wanted to expel me. Of course, I wouldn't agree. I had worked so hard to get into this university, and I certainly wouldn't give it up because of a false accusation. But that alley was desolate and there were few surveillance cameras. How could I prove my innocence? The speed at which public opinion was fermenting was astonishing. After leaving the school leader's office, I searched the internet, and the topic was still highly popular. I could only go to find Judy first. However, as soon as I went downstairs, I saw Frank walking towards me. Under the gaze of many people, he took my hand and said in a gentle voice, "It's okay, I'm here." Yes, he had come to support me. Just a few minutes after leaving the office, Frank took me back up again. The school leaders actually knew Frank. When they saw him, they were stunned for 2 seconds first, and then quickly stepped forward to greet him warmly. They were completely different from the unfeeling way they had pressured me to drop out of school just now. Frank asked the school leaders to call Mia, Judy, and the others. In less than 10 minutes, everyone was there. Then Frank threw a USB drive on the desk and said calmly, "This is the surveillance camera at the back door of a nearby store. It just happens to be able to capture the depths of the alley. It's not very clear, but it's enough to see the truth of what happened." I noticed that Mia and Judy's faces instantly turned a bit paler, especially Judy. She turned to look at me, wanting to say something, but in the end, she held back. After the video finished playing, the office was completely silent. The director, who had reacted, immediately scolded Judy and then apologized to me in front of Frank. He also said that he would upload the video to the internet to clear my name. "No need," Frank said calmly, "before I came, I had already arranged for someone to upload the video." Frank took me out of the office. All the way, he held my hand, and we left the school gate and got into the car. He turned his head to look at me. "When something happened, why didn't you tell me? With what identity should I tell you?" I looked up at him. As a friend, or the daughter of a business partner, perhaps the grievance in my words was too obvious. Frank looked at me for a long time and then smiled instead. "Sorry," he said in a low voice. "I've been busy with this recently." As he spoke, he took out a jewelry box from somewhere. My heart skipped a beat, and I seemed to guess what was going on. Sure enough, the next second, he opened the box. Inside was the necklace that I had designed overnight that night. it was exactly the same as my design draft, not off by even the slightest bit. Frank handed the jewelry box to the palm of my hand. This necklace was originally prepared for a confession. They say that a relationship should start with a bouquet of flowers, but I think ours should start with this necklace. The car window was half down, and Frank's face was hidden in the sunlight. He picked up the necklace, leaned over, and put it on me. Jenny, I moved my gaze away from the necklace and just raised my head. Then a kiss fell. Frank didn't ask me if I could be his girlfriend. He just said vaguely during the kiss. Wearing his necklace meant that I had agreed. I became Frank's girlfriend, and the relationship gift package he gave me, in addition to that necklace with all the materials being extremely exquisite, also included a good show. 2 days later, Kathy, the nanny of Rose Mansion, sent me a message and told me a shocking piece of gossip. Lucas suddenly came home this morning and accidentally caught Mia sleeping in Simon's bed. Both of them were naked and sharing the same bed. Lucas was almost furious. He smashed things in the house and kicked Mia out. Come to think of it, it's no wonder Lucas was angry. He had raised Mia for more than 20 years. In his heart, even though he had now found out that they didn't have a blood relationship, he had already regarded her as his own daughter. How could he not be angry that his daughter and son were like this? What's more, Simon was married. His wife was his high school classmate. The wedding was held in a low-key manner, and few outsiders knew about it, but Mia knew it very well. Moreover, Simon's wife was currently still in the lactation period. The two of them had caused such a ridiculous thing, so of course Lucas was going crazy with anger. Kathy gossiped with me, saying that Lucas directly kicked Mia out, and when Simon's wife found out, she angrily filed for divorce and demanded that Simon leave the house with nothing. Lucas directly agreed on Simon's behalf and also gave a large sum of compensation to the mother and child. As for Simon, Lucas confiscated all the properties under his name and froze his bank card. He didn't exactly cut off the relationship with his son completely, but at least for the next year or two, he was determined to let him fend for himself. I was lying on the bed, munching on melon seeds while reading the good show that Kathy had relayed to me, thinking about the things Mia had deliberately done to torment me before and then thinking about the present. It's really true that you won't die if you don't seek death. Moreover, now that I think about it, no wonder Simon was so partial to Mia. It turned out that there was such a relationship between them. After finishing gossiping, I immediately called Frank and asked him how he had done it. Frank chuckled. Once when I was attending a cocktail party, I happened to run into the affair between Lucas's daughter and son in the bathroom, but they didn't see me. I've had my assistant pay special attention to the whereabouts of Simon and Mia recently. When I found out that they were both at home early this morning, I called Lucas and found a random excuse to ask him to go home. That's all there is to it. After he finished speaking, Frank's voice came to my ear again. Come downstairs. I'll take you to dinner. I was stunned for a moment and then ran to the window to take a look. The car is by the roadside. If you don't like it, you can choose one yourself from the garage at home. I quickly went downstairs. My mom's chemotherapy went very smoothly 2 days ago, and her condition was very stable. To celebrate, Frank promised to take me to eat hot pot today. I've been suffering from excessive internal heat recently, and my throat was a bit inflamed. I had to insist on drinking herbal tea every day to get a little better. I had begged him for several days before he agreed to let me eat hot pot in the restaurant. In the curling steam, I suddenly became curious and asked Frank how he had fallen in love with me. There were countless women who tried every means to get close to Frank every day. There was no reason for him to fall in love with me, a Cinderella who grew up in a small mountain village. Frank poured me a cup of herbal tea and smiled. I don't know, if I have to say, maybe it was at that press conference that day. I saw the girl on the stage with clear eyes. Then I saw her secretly pinch her thigh and then have a tragic scene of father-daughter reunion with Lucas with tears in her eyes. I thought it was interesting. As soon as I left after watching the excitement, I was rear-ended. When I got out of the car, it was that girl. There was no scratch on the car, so I let her go. But then, Frank looked at me and said helplessly, in just 2 streets, she rear-ended me 3 times. I took a sip of tea and asked timidly, well, shouldn't a normal person be very angry after being rear-ended 3 times? Yeah, Frank nodded. At first, I was really angry, but as soon as I saw how panicked you were, my anger somehow dissipated. He leaned over and rubbed the top of my head with his palm. At that time, I was thinking that it would be quite interesting to marry this little girl home, just a bit hard on the car. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.